It's 7 o'clock. We will call this meeting to order for September 16th, 2024. For Board of Trustees, let us stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hit my... There's a lot going on down there. Feet are all twisted. Okay. Clerk Lucero, could you please call the roll?
Bartholomew.
Here.
Edwards.
Here.
Rasa.
Here.
Parker.
Present.
Carrick.
Here.
Yes.
Fowler.
Yes.
Sorry. Poznanski, sorry.
Here.
I say welcome.
Welcome, welcome.
Okay, moving into the approval of our agenda.
We need, you want a motion first?
Oh, we got additions.
Making a, yeah. Would you like to approve as is or make your or?
I would like to move a motion that we add on new business C, the Romeo Village Council Rules of Procedure. The information is in the packet. I think it just probably got left off the agenda. So that would go under new business C. That's it.
Yeah. No, this was requested. It wasn't requested in time. However, yes,
Tuesday?
technically, according to rules procedure, not within the time frame. But I did throw them in there so that they would still be in there, assuming you could add it the.
So do you want it off?
No, I'm saying that's
Okay.
what I
Thank you.
expected, so I still threw them in the back there for you guys.
Perfect, thank you.
With that addition, I'll make a motion to approve the agenda for September 16th, 2024.
If I could, real quick, I know we, on unfinished business, if we could add in the Tell Street property on that, because I know we made a motion to do something, I know we didn't get a response on.
It's in my update, unless you'd literally like to discuss it.
Oh, if it's gonna be covered,
Yeah.
then no, but, okay, we're good. I'm good. I'll second Nate or Nolan's motion.
Okay, we have a motion. I thought you made the motion.
I did.
I was gonna say,
Oh.
we had a motion by Shelley with the addition to new business of C, rules of procedure. And I guess we have support by Nolan.
Support it, that's fine.
We're good there.
All in favor with the addition to the agenda?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? There are none opposed. Welcome, Mark. We move into the approval of our minutes for August 19th, 2024. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from our meeting of August 19th, 2024.
Second.
I have a motion by Edwards, support by Parker, approving the minutes as is. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? There are none opposed. We have our council bills. We have two sets of bills. Let me get my glasses on for these numbers. In the amount of $55,194.82, and also $1,048,670.61. If you did look through your bills, you will see that the $1,048,000 is rather large. That is with our $780,000 fire payment that was made appropriately on time, hand delivered. So that is on the high side, but that is why. Do we have a motion for bills, discussion?
I'll make a motion to pay the bills as presented.
Support.
We have a motion by Edwards, support by Bartholomew. Do we have any discussion?
Couple quick questions. Was the Mitt TV paid or not paid? I didn't,
It is not, and I do have something I can
Okay.
discuss, but it is not in these bills, no.
okay. And then, I noticed the Amazon account is still being used, but it has the previous clerk's name. So is that account,
By the time we closed, there was already certain things still being run that had to catch up to the point that the card was shut off, if that makes any sense.
yeah.
And then we put my card in for the interim, and then Clerk Lucero just finally received his card.
So the Amazon account itself, is that in the village?
That is the village's account.
And they pay the prime fee or whatever. Okay, great, thank you.
Okay, we had a motion by Edwards and support by Bartholomew. If there's no more discussion, could you please call the roll?
Yeah. Bartholomew,
Yes.
Edwards,
Yes.
Rossa,
Yes.
Parker,
Yes.
Kerr,
Yes.
Fowler,
Yes.
Poznanski.
Yes. If we could just note here, at the end of those bills, we have the treasurer's, for our investment. Since March, we have just under $80,000 that we have accrued, and in total, she has down at the bottom between the two, about $250,000 we have earned since, I think it was December. So, well on our way. Following that, you have your budget. I would like to note, just for the record, if you look at the last few pages of that budget, you'll see something that you've never seen before. These are vendors that have been added since the last time you received, since we paid bills. Considering, I don't know what you would want to call it, considering what we just ran into with paying off Aramark and the CFM group and the new vendor coming on and we're not aware of it, this is what myself along with accounting has come up with, that when a new vendor comes on, we will see the name, who they are, what it is, so that everybody sees that this is a new vendor being paid for the first time. And should you have questions about it, it's here. This way, we thought of a few different ways, but we didn't want to essentially handicap anyone down the road that because at one point we had a dishonest clerk that we go overboard in the checks and balance. This is a way that we could safely have a check and inform the board, but not be too aggressive in making it burdensome to do work. So just so you know, that will be at the back of that report going forward also. Okay, we had no special presentations. We did not have any correspondence. We were moving into our public comment. If we have some public comment? You have 3 minutes, Miss Sandra.
Oh, I won't be long. First time being up here. My name is Sandra Brooks, and I reside at 255 Muzzy. I have a complaint about the cars on Dickinson and Muzzy. The school is right across the street from my house. They do not stop. They do not obey the traffic sign. I'll stop at all. I'm afraid somebody is going to get hurt there. I usually be there even looking out. The kids cross the street and everything. But main thing, on the weekend, it is horrible. They just zoom across there. And then if the police is there, they'll wait until they're gone. And then they just go head on through there. But that is dangerous. I was thinking about a speed bump or some type of caution like that. I went through New Haven, and on they stop signs, they got flashing lights on them. That would probably help. But it is in need, great need.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Sandra.
Do we have any more public comment?
In fact, does it seem to be a certain time of the day, or just, is it all day? Okay.
Yeah,
Especially weekends, it's horrible.
yeah, we can discuss it and get with chief,
Come to pick their children up, they be late.
then they're flying.
Zoom right across there. They don't stop at all.
Thank you, sorry.
Okay. Ms. Smith?
Hi, Sharon Smith from 377 North Main. I'm actually here kind of on behalf of the Rotary. We had spent a lot of time and money to put the fountain back into the village park, and it's still not hooked up. I do understand that from the Friends of the Park who had done the work, there was some water mains or water breaks that weren't taken care of, and It was back and forth on whether or not the DPW should take care of that or the Friends of the Park should take care of that. My estimation, that park is under the purview of the Village of Romeo. We need to take it back from the Friends and do that work ourselves. It's a little gem that's underneath a fresh garbage bag today because the other one was getting a little weather beaten. But I just ask somebody take charge. I mean, I know that trustees don't get paid much at all, but you know, the president is busy, the clerk very busy. One of the trustees, please take it under your wing and let's get something done. We wanted to have it, we installed it in June. We wanted to have it done or hoped to have it done. I've been up here before about it, to have it done by Peach Fest and it wasn't. So it would just be nice to take back our park and let's take care of it ourselves.
Would you mind if I give an update about it during my report?
I'd love to.
Okay,
I'd love to.
I'll
Thank
add
you.
that, okay. Do we have any more public comment? Okay, hold on. Okay, that closes our public comment. We will move into our officer reports. Let's start with all of our board members. We'll start down at the end with you. Nathan, do you have anything?
No, I'm all set.
Nope, I'm all
Edwards?
set. Thank you.
Rousseau?
Just working with the tree board, they're doing a fabulous job, and remind everybody that it is back to school. It is dark out in the morning, we have middle schoolers walking, and so if people could turn their porch lights on in the morning to help some of those middle schoolers as they walk down our sidewalks, that would be appreciated. And also remember that the light at Hollister in Maine is now changing, and so slow down, watch the light, and be careful. Thank you.
Parker?
Nothing, trustee, I can do the planning real quick. This month we talked about, some site plans, 150 East Pond and, what was the other one, I'm sorry, 100 McLean. We also had a fence workshop, we went back and forth, this has been going on for, probably since you were on there, Nolan, and it's, finally getting hashed out. We're gonna revise, or bring a revised fencing ordinance probably in a month or so to the table. That's what we got going on there.
Sounds good. Care?
No, nothing really. Peach Fest was great, so thanks to the police, DPW, everyone that volunteered. That was a smooth operation.
Fowler?
Nothing at this time.
Okay. We'll move into my report. I told Clerk Lucero he could follow up at the end, as he can wax eloquent and give you his update. Mine, one of our grants, the EV tip, do you remember the electric vehicle? That really has nothing to do with electric vehicles, but it's here because of the electric vehicle. Okay. So we finally hashed out that RFP. The proposal has been made. It has been posted. It's on the Mitten. They had a few people that they had worked with in the past that they specifically had a list of vendors that they sent it to. It closes here next week. We will have, committee will review the proposals, committee being still same people, myself, DDA, and the two from the EV tip group. And we will be ready to make a recommendation to the board at our October meeting. With Rattel Street, good news for us, I guess. Depends on which side you sit. After our last meeting, a local resident, Andrew Hale, who also sits on our planning commission, he did some digging and was able to actually locate a warranty deed from 1940 in which the portion or the parcel of Rattel Street that we were concerned about was deeded to the Village of Romeo. So once we had this information, we've moved forward with all of the planned work on Rattel, all of the curb, all of the road. I would also note that I've informed HRC that the village will not be paying for the failed title search that showed nothing. So that is Rattel Street.
Good for Andrew.
Yes, and thank you to Andrew for that. Sent in the approved ballot language. Was able to do the proof. There was a minor typo to that was corrected. I don't know that we approved it wrong as much as just when they, in putting it into the ballot, they left off a zero somewhere. So that was corrected. We're all set for to be on the November ballot. At this point, the next steps with this would be myself, Clerk Lucero, getting together and coming up with an appropriate informational mailer that is legal in the language of explanation of what the villagers will be considering. In regards to the village cemetery expansion, AEW's confirmed that they will have the survey of the retention pond ready for us to make a resolution at next month's meeting. So look for that next month. In regards to the DDA, there was a motion to continue to support the Art and Wine Walk. This year it will be held on Friday, October 11th. And they also went with Park Mobile as the parking app. I'm not going to say much on that, as I will let that subcommittee kind of take that. For Reckling Park, the charrette has been updated and set for October 1st, 4 to 6 p.m. It is being held at the park on the property, so you can envision what it is you would like to have there. They'll have some visioning boards, suggestions, a bunch of sticky notes and markers. Write down anything you would like to see, mark stuff off that you don't want at all, for sure. You know, you don't want that splash pad, cross it out. That sort of stuff. Everybody is welcome, and please encourage everyone to stop by. It's an open house, so anytime between 4 to 6 that you're available. The more information we have, the more we can focus in on what the residents would like to see there.
Is it rain or shine?
Yeah, I guess we'll just put out, they have a couple little pop-up tents
Okay.
that we'll just kind of huddle under.
Thank you.
To your question of the Mitt TV, we've come to the end of the year true-up with the Mitt TV, and this has resulted in a reimbursement to the village by Mitt TV. Unfortunately, the contract that we have is a bit lacking in its specifications on how payments should be made either way, whether to Mitt or back to the village at this end of the year true-up. So for now, I asked Mr. Clark to reach out to Mitt TV attorney to discuss. To my knowledge, we haven't made a connection.
We have not. Excuse me, we have not. I've called, he has called, and the calls have not come at the same time.
Okay. So at this point, we just haven't made a connection. The hope would be that we could just clarify this language and make a decision going forward of how we would both act in this way, so we don't end up in this, what do we do each year? But until I do hear back, we do not plan to make payments. And we'll see where we get from there. For the SEMCOG grant, we submitted our first reimbursement request, basically just some engineering to the state, not, I don't even think it's a few $1,000s at this point, just getting started there. For the tree board, like you've said, if, they finished the grant. Thank you to those on the tree board that took the time. Mr. Smith and, man, I forget Betty's last name. I only know her by Betty.
Cassidy.
Thank you, Cassidy. I hear that they did a lot of extra work. I don't know anybody else, but the tree board, thank you for that. I was able to sign it, send it off, so fingers crossed, we're waiting to hear back. For the village park drinking fountain. So met in the park, I'm trying to think back, it might have been July at this point, with the installers of the sprinkling, or the water system. At this point, we've located where there's a leak. Something hasn't been capped off. And the leak, unfortunately, seems to be right under the work that was just done. All of that, the brick that was laid. And at this point, I haven't followed back up on where they're at in taking the next steps. I know that Tim had gone out there and he'd met, or had at least phone conversation with Brian. I don't know how far that got. Right now, big focus is the roads. Should be finishing up on that, so maybe we can follow back up in the fall. But that's where that's been, so. Mm-hmm. Oh,
Oh, thank you. We're permissible?
yes, yeah.
Okay, so can they go after them that way?
Well, I don't know that we need to go after anybody. They're willing to do the work and
Well,
come
the
back and
warranty
fix
has to
it.
be into effect.
And they're willing to come back and fix it. It's just a matter of Tim being out there. I don't want things touched without village knowing and seeing what's going on. So until we have somebody available to be there, while they're also there doing the work and to turn the water on. That's kind of where we're at.
And the permits were finalized out by our inspectors, correct?
Nothing's been final. Permits were pulled. The project isn't done yet. And then to finish up, again, reiterating what Nolan had to say, thank you to everyone, all of our staff, our police, the Romeo Lions for another successful Peach Fest. And that is it for my report. Move into Clerk Lucero.
All right. First, I'm gonna share a letter that was shared with me by Debbie Martone, the cemetery board chairperson. At the Monday, September 16th Village Council meeting, please present to the council the following update from the Romeo Cemetery Board. On Wednesday, October 9th at 6 p.m., the Romeo Cemetery Board will be holding our first master plan workshop. With the upcoming expansion of the 13th and 14th editions, we will be creating a blueprint of how to maximize efficient usage of the new area for burials, as well as plan for upgrades, upkeep, and immediate and projected future needs of the cemetery as a whole. The workshop is open to the public and will be held at the Morton Street Meeting Room. We welcome everyone's thoughts and ideas. The cemetery board is also working on creating new policies to better serve our village families with their burial needs and the maintenance, repairs, and preservation of their foundations and the historic headstones. This has become a relevant issue and will be discussed during our master plan workshop and at our next board meeting, which will be Wednesday, September 18th at 3 p.m. I believe the participation in the lottery sale of lots and more recently the 12th edition was a reminder of how important it is to address the burial needs of village residents, especially since we now have the ability to do so. I feel a sense of urgency to continue working on the expansion to the 13th and 14th editions and would like to ask the council for assistance from the DPW to remove debris from that area so we can move more quickly on getting fill dirt before the winter months impede our progress. Thank you for your consideration. Debbie Martone, Cemetery Board Chairperson.
Jimmy, real quick, you said that the master plan meeting was date and time?
Date and time, October 9th, 6 p.m.
6 p.m. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, as for my updates, please bear with me. I've only been on the job 2.5 weeks cumulatively between my absence right after getting appointed. I'm going to be working with the boards and commissions in the village to help them craft ordinances for the Board of Trustees review and approval. This is needed. The ordinances need to be amended in order to empower our entities here within the village with actual authority or teeth, if you will. There's a number of boards that if they make a ruling, really, it doesn't have teeth and people really can just do what they want if they want to. Ordinance updates are also required to support the enforcement of ordinances that are already out there. I also discovered there's a backlog of ordinances that need to be updated and published. I'm going through those right now. So hopefully by next meeting, I will have some ordinances for you guys to either approve or at least, the very least, look at and consider. As far as the clerk's office itself, I've applied for a .gov URL extension for the village. The .gov allows the village to be able to apply for certain federal funding. A lot of times federal funding requires you to have a municipal extension on your email, and .org actually will take anywhere between 12 to 16 weeks for the federal government to verify that. So if we do the work on the front end, getting the .gov extension, that cuts it down to like 3 days. There's a number of grants and stuff that are available for the village and the departments, so that is a necessary step. I also signed up for the GSA, which is the General Services Administration, the GSA Advantage. That allows any participating municipality, if you're not familiar with the GSA offers its purchasing power to qualified governments in the United States. So we get the same rate that has already been negotiated by the federal government on goods and services. Sometimes it's between 30 and 70% off. I was able to establish an open line of communication with the former clerk when I got in order to get the passwords and some other issues resolved. I was also able to implement a retention schedule. One of the big issues, and I'll touch a little bit more on here in a second, one of the big issues with the village right now is we have a plethora of 160, 180 years worth of files. Some of them need to be retained. A lot of them have passed their window for retention. So I'm trying to go through those line by line to see what we need to hold on to and what we can actually get rid of, because it's overflowing. It's a safety hazard upstairs, it's a fire hazard, but I'll touch on that here in a little bit. Then we had a staff meeting on Friday to identify and address issues that everybody has been, ongoing issues that everybody has had, and also their perception or working reality with the clerk's office, what I might be able to do better. We've identified a number of things that I'm going to work on, but also ways to support them. One of the things that I'm looking to implement, and we've spoken about it with the office staff, right now they're currently on a 4-day on, 1 day off schedule. Because right now, and you'll see in my findings when I read that off, we're at critical mass here in the village. I need all hands on deck. So we have spoken about implementing a work from home day rather than a day off. That way tasks are still getting completed, even though they might not be in the office, we can still get those tasks completed. So with that, I'll round back to the rest of my report, but I have some remarks. As I previously stated during my appointment, I'm not in the business of talking badly about any of my predecessors. I will, however, report my initial assessment based on findings which are stark at best. I have only been in the office for 2.5 weeks, and what I've been able to find is concerning. Simply put, we, the village, are not taking on water, we are sinking. After an in-depth but by no means exhaustive search, it would appear based on evidence that the village has been mismanaged for the better part of 40 years. The findings support the conclusion that it was not done maliciously for a good period of time. Rather, some of the mismanagement came from a survival mode state. A state of being where one must decide what tasks or services will suffer so that the most critical functions take precedent. These tasks and services are the ones that are the most detrimental to our government should they cease to continue. More recently, however, the findings point to the root cause being gross negligence. Ergo, policies and procedures put into place through a thorough and misguided belief in executive overreach by the former president and clerk, and failure to understand the scope and nature of an elected official's roles in the management of the village. Because of this, the village is dangerously close to being insolvent due to this mismanagement and gross misconduct. The job of the village clerk is to serve the community. The residents are the only entity bestowed with the power of oversight over the office of the clerk, with the exception of the president being granted an extremely limited scope. There is no other entity granted with these powers, either real or implied. I do not take this fact lightly. The people are my boss, and I must do right by them. I am not here to play politics. Politics cannot be practiced at the expense of the residents. Over the years, this office has had a contentious and almost adversarial relationship with the board. That relationship has permeated throughout the entire village and has been felt by residents and staff alike. It is unacceptable. It is incumbent upon the elected officials of this village to do right by the stakeholders, i.e. the employees and residents of the village of Romeo. The proposed solutions, which I will go through, if not acted upon with all due haste, will likely result in an emergency manager being put in place should nothing be done and identified threats come to fruition. We are at a critical moment here in the village, and I cannot state that enough. We can no longer afford to defer or neglect our fiduciary duties to the residents and employees of the village of Romeo. Lastly, I would like to go on the record and thank the staff of the village of Romeo. It has become abundantly clear that they are the only thing that has stood in the way of total collapse and have kept the continuity of our government over the years. The fact that they have been able to do their jobs with little to no support and limited resources is nothing short of amazing. I appreciate them as they are the heroes of this village, keeping it from truly ever falling apart. And I believe we owe them a debt of gratitude. I'm confident that the team we now have in place can get the village headed in the right direction, but we are going to need the full support and cooperation of this board. And with that said, my assessment, the records room, for lack of a better term, is atrocious. It is spilling out into the second level. It is unsecured. And quite frankly, we are one tragedy away from losing everything in this village. We will lose our current historical and vital records. Case in point, the Tuesday before Peach Festival, we all lost power. I had a friend that was videotaping the sky and sent me a video. I was in the office when a lightning bolt touched down close to the village. We were about a quarter mile to a half mile away. Had it struck the village, we lose everything, everything. Ordinances need to be updated. It's incumbent upon this board to periodically review ordinances so that we can make resolutions. I know there's a backlog of them. I'm going to try my best to get through them as quickly as possible to support you guys in that manner. But the problem that is presented right now is the resolutions that are not presented to the public right now, the resolutions that this board has made that are not out there to the public, if they have any transaction related to them, either through enforcement or permit, it exposes us to legal action, because you have people reading one thing while we're operating on a completely different side of things. They need to be updated. I'm going to try my best, like I said, to get those rectified. And I ask, please, as the board, please check in with me. And I will be candid. I've been quite candid with everybody I've met thus far, telling them that my office is open. As I said, we need to build out the second level for a secure records room. I'm getting a couple quotes right now for the second floor. I'm going to be having builders come out and look at the space within the next few weeks. And I will be reaching out with architects for quote on drafting drawings for that space. One of our building officials, Mike Bomarito, is going to help with that as well. Some of the other municipal architects that he has worked with, so that we have enough quotes. And at some point, after I've collected all those quotes, I will come back to you guys with those for you guys to make a decision on. The office itself, we need an upgrade. We probably should have a camera system in there. There have been more than a few instances where you have individuals that may become irate. It's just protection for the staff. It's also legal protection for the village. If something were to happen and it becomes a he said, she said, well, now we have actual video record. We probably should do key card access to the back end of the office. The way it's secured now is, it's just not secure. You can push through that door. The server needs to be moved upstairs, so that's part of the build out as well. Our records server is literally on the other side of a window, an old window that would easily be knocked out, and anybody could destroy whatever we have on file now. We don't have much, but compared to what's upstairs, but that needs to be in a more secure location, so it's away from any kind of tinkering, or, you know, accidentally someone trips when they're getting a coffee and spills it on there. I mean, that's the worst case scenario. I've already had one company come out. I'm waiting on their quote. I'm gonna have at least 2 more, so we have at least 3 to go against. The village needs to invest in fire-safe file cabinets for the retained records. That's going to run right now. It is ballparked around 40,000. It's really gonna depend on if I can get the approval quickly through GSA. Typically, those cabinets run, to have a large lateral cabinet, a 5-shelf large lateral cabinet, those run about $10,000 to $12,000 through GSA. We can get them about anywhere from $6,000 to $7,000. We need, at the very least, 5 to 6 of them. There's a number of files that we are required to hold on to, and those would fill those easily. We need to invest in digitizing all records. Preliminary findings estimate the cost between $45,000 and $75,000. If we digitize all records, that meets the requirements by the state for retention. So physical copies of certain documents, we can shred and have them housed in a cloud, and we'll be good. Again, with that budget, I plan to come to the board at a future date once I have actual quotes for you guys to consider. Because of the records retention room, or the storage room, and the general state of the village hall, we are actually in violation of the Public Employment Relations Act. The office was furnished by Facebook Marketplace. And although I can appreciate the frugality in this, I don't believe it's the image we want to put forth for our village offices. And furthermore, the village staff deserves quality office furniture, not secondhand hand-me-downs. You know, for a long time it was, well, does it work? And that is an unacceptable line. They shouldn't have to make do. I have a number of desks that are not working fully. The chairs are horrible. And per the law, they deserve to have conveniences, if you want to call them. And having broken desks and chairs and non-efficient workstations, it has violation written all over it, and I'm just trying to, at some point we have to stop the hemorrhaging and start focusing on what we can do to make things right. After all, the village hall is the face of our government, and if that is how the face of our government is, I have yet to make it out to our other departments, but I venture to guess that the departments that are away from the public eye are way worse. I mean, for instance, I've seen our dispatch room. Our dispatch room is in need of a bad overhaul. The environment is not conducive to an efficient workspace. I mean, the main office is a gigantic violation. Like I said, desks are falling apart, chairs are falling apart. I mean, the immediate need is for chairs, but by no means is that, like, we do that and everything's good. In all honesty, I would like to move away from the workstations that we currently have and move more towards laptops so that we can have our employees work from home so that we are getting more tasks done. I have a meeting set for next week with a workspace designer who actually works with municipalities. She will design a professional workspace. that promotes efficiency and effectiveness of tasks. And she will be quoting out the main office as well as the dispatch room in the police department. And like the other expenditures, I will be coming to the board at a future date when I have an actual quote. Now, real quick, I just want to say, everything I'm mentioning here, I know when I was appointed, one of the things that Mr. Fowler had said, and I did not take it lightly, and I think about this every day, is do right by the residents and listen to the residents. And I met thousands of them during Peach Fest. And at the end of the day, I look at it like this, that if our employees are not supported correctly and they are not given the resources, every resource available, then at the end of the day, tasks and services will be diminished. And from there, the end user is the resident, which means the resident is suffering. We need to support our staff. I understand why it's gotten to this point, but it can no longer be allowed to just be the status quo and accept that as just, okay, well, that is what it is. So the issues listed above need to be addressed immediately. I'm still in the midst of a 180-day review and assessment of the village. There are more issues that have been presented to me, although more information on the root cause of these issues is required before a solution can be presented to the board. Please understand that as this assessment progresses, more issues will present themselves. Again, failure to act is unacceptable. If the village refuses to acknowledge and address, then the office of the clerk, as the clerk, I will be forced to act in the best interest of the residents in accord with the law. At the end of my 180-day assessment, I will be prepared to file reports with Michigan Employment Relations Commission with concerns to workplace violations. If it does not come from us and comes from an employee, it will be 10 times worse. As well as with the state for emergency management team consideration. I do not want this. I don't think it's a good policy of the village to take away votes and voices, but at the same time, we are dangerously close to insolvency if we continue down the path that this village has been in for so long. It's not going to end well. And that's what I fear, and that is my opinion. And the reason why I'm making these as well is because I'm in a unique position like all of you. I am also a resident. And every decision, everything I've put out, I have to weigh against, is it right for the village, but is it also right for the residents? Because at the end of the day, if it's not right for the residents, I too am going to be affected. So please understand, I do not make these recommendations or statements lightly. But at the end of the day, we have to start doing something. If we cannot do right by our stakeholders, then someone must. My hopes are that we can come together and work together to ensure that these deficiencies and potential future ones are addressed adequately as they arise. And lastly, I'd like to thank Ms. Rosso for visiting on Friday, visiting the office. And I may be wrong, but it's my understanding that the trustees have not, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but the trustees have not been in the office in a long time, beyond the front counter, and spent quality time learning about the staff. So with that, I'm making this offer to every one of you guys. I'm putting my money where my mouth is. I make an offer to each and every one of you guys to please schedule time with me, come into the office and work an 8-hour day with the staff to see exactly what they deal with, their daily struggles and deficiencies. And I understand that ask, what that ask is, and you will be paid. I will forfeit my clerk's salary for the day and pay you to work alongside the staff. because you need to see what it is I am talking about. At the end of the day, if you can't see it, it's just words. And I need you guys to see it. It is unacceptable, and I know, I believe it, that if you guys see what I see, you would agree it is unacceptable. So that is my challenge to you. Please come in. Please come in and see how they work. Please come in and then tell me a myriad of things that I truly believe they deserve a raise. And tell me they make too much. And tell me that they are just fine getting by in their situation. I make that challenge to you guys, and again, I do not do that lightly. It is important that we take care of these people. And it is important because they take care of our residents. They need to be supported. And I am sorry for being Mr. Doom and Gloom, I truly am, but I promised you guys when you appointed me that I would report my findings, and it is likely to get worse before it gets better, and I do apologize, but these are things that for so long have just gone either under the radar or just accepted as common practice, and we can no longer allow that to happen. It got here by asking too much of one person to run the entire office. So I thank you guys for your time. Thank you for allowing me to give you my unfettered remarks and report. And if you guys have any questions, I'm available.
Thank you.
Thank you, Clerk Lucero. Moving into our committee reports, our sewer committee.
Justin and I met with Bruce Township and had a good discussion. Nothing got resolved per se. There's no timing issues here at all. There's no panic.
Seemed to be a little bit, I interject, they are asking for something, if the board would be willing to negotiate them getting another 100,000.
Right, well, that's again where I was gonna go kind of next. We have to, the three of us have to, or as a committee, have to get with HRC and see just what is available
Right.
now and potentially in the future. Because without that, we didn't have it at our fingertips in our discussion, so we couldn't really answer that question at all.
And Bruce did mention they would be interested in sharing the cost and whatever we've got to.
I have put that ask to our engineering company. Haven't gotten anything. I do have a meeting with them though tomorrow. Do a road update and I can throw that in with them.
Okay, that'd be
But,
great.
While we're on the subcommittee, I have asked Clerk Lucero if he would just jump in all the way and take over my position on this subcommittee, so I could focus more on the ethics subcommittee that hasn't, we met once, lost a clerk. We've kind of stalled. So I've asked if he would take over my seat and then I could focus on ethics. So if the committee and the board would be okay with that, I would make a motion.
How does it work then, being a subcommittee of the village board, once we include someone that's not part of the board? Is it still considered a subcommittee or more of a task force? Or how does that work? Mark, do you have any insight on that?
It would still be a subcommittee.
It would, okay.
It's still
That's-
a public meeting. You have the ability to either set forth village policy or predict decisions. And I err on the side of caution when it comes to Open Meetings Act issues. And so I would treat it as a public meeting of a duly constituted village subcommittee.
And we've in general posted our meetings, taken minutes. We've had clerks on multiple subcommittees for
Certainly.
years.
I know Marion used to do a lot of them.
Mike? yeah.
So Matt, did you say that they're looking for an extra 100,000? Is that what I?
Yeah.
Well, I think Justin actually mentioned, but yes, that's correct. I mean, that's what they need
More
up
urgent?
front.
Yeah.
The rest of it's kind of gonna be years down the road.
And we still have that extra capacity at Ford's, right?
Well, The
No,
answer
we
is
don't know
yes,
what
but
we have at the
We need to
moment.
get solid numbers,
And
and that's
you-
what we could only get from HRC.
And I wouldn't take anything away from that property. You don't know, that could require more than what is there. If that gets built out fully with a multiple development, it could actually require more. Oh,
They had extra anyway.
It seems to me like we did have the capacity, though, to do that.
Yes.
But again, I don't want to say anything or confirm anything like that without the numbers solid in my back
Yeah,
pocket.
their end ask and their end would be closer to $1 million. Currently at five,
There's 550?
right around 5, and want another 100 now, end ask is close to $1 million. So we're on a 2.1.
Yep,
million
2.4,
plant.
I think.
2.1, I think it's
So that was
2.1.
2.4. Is it?
2.1, I
Of course,
think.
that's a negotiation of the price too, also, right?
Yeah, we've thought about some different options with them, and,
Okay.
and that's where we just need the numbers. We have our annexed property that is coming onto the system. Don't know how much that looks. We still have a green space that is undecided and not sold that could be homes,
Yep.
which is, homes are the biggest user when it comes to waste water. We just have other areas, so
They have-
need to get numbers.
they have acquired, a permit to do their own if needed, or if they could obtain funding. So it could become a situation where when the contract runs out, they don't need us. And then we're sitting on a 2.1 million plant that is very underutilized. So it could go one way or the other.
How long is their permit good for? Does it have a?
It just has to be renewed. They actually acquired it from the gentleman that was gonna develop
Do you remember, Mark, how long the contract's good for?
the
The,
permit.
the current contract
Yeah.
with the Bruce Township.
Oh, you are current
No, I
contract?
asked about their permit.
Yeah, she asked about the permit.
But
Oh,
I am curious
Oh.
to know about the contract with Bruce, too.
Off the top of my head, I do not know.
I can't-
I think it's within 10 years, maybe teens, but
Rather than guess, I'll just say I don't know.
Yeah,
Because
we're all in the same boat there on that, I think, so. Okay, so that's,
So if I make a motion to remove myself from the sewer subcommittee and Clerk Lucero take over the seat.
I'll support.
We have a motion by Poznanski, support by Edwards. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Do we have any opposed? We're none opposed. Thank you.
next meeting is scheduled for October 7th at 6 PM at Bruce Township.
Moving into our PILOP subcommittee. I don't know if Nolan or
Yeah,
Danielle, whoever is gonna.
this past week, Nathan, myself, and Danielle met. Like you kind of touched on briefly, they approved entering into contract with Park Mobile, the DDA did, and that includes the DDA holding the accounts for any funds being deposited.
Well, we are gonna have a discussion on that further, though. Between the village and the DDA. Who will hold the money, as in, so the parking app is hosted through the DDA. But this board has not given permission for them to collect the money on our property. And further accounting and speaking with accounting, it would just, for ease of transactions and follow through, it'd be easier in the village's accounts.
Okay.
But we're gonna all sit and have a discussion later this week.
That is what the DDA approved, though, I believe, at their last meeting. Whether that has any validity or not is different, but
Correct.
that's good to know. Mr. Clark was reviewing some of the ordinances to see what needed to be changed. We printed out a couple and discussed them at our subcommittee meeting, and compared some to Rochester. Just, they have a lot of specifics. Ours is a little more generalized. That might go back to touching on updating some ordinances that haven't been visited in a while. Chief Roy confirmed that Macomb County, with Macomb County, that we don't need their permission to charge for parking on Main Street. I don't know how new that information is to us. And we're gonna talk about the $70,000 later, so I'll spare the time on that. And we went over a mailer as well. We're still kind of kicking around some ideas with it and seeing what information is simple to convey to the residents so that they understand our plan, where the money's going, what numbers we might be looking at collecting, how many spaces are available. So there's lots of information. We don't want to overload them, but we want to make sure that the transition is easy and clear what we're trying to accomplish. Nathan, beyond that, I don't know if I have much else.
Well, that's pretty much it. You did a good job. And I'd like to thank Danielle Lee for what she's been doing. She's been doing a lot of work.
She's doing a lot of work.
A lot of work. So thank you, Danielle.
Okay, and then moving into our ethics subcommittee, again, we haven't met. So hopefully by next month, now that a little less, we'll get something moving forward here.
Yep.
Okay, moving into our unfinished business, we have our RCS Homecoming Parade permit here.
I'll make a motion, if that's what we're looking for.
Yes.
To approve the event permit for the Romeo Community Schools for the Homecoming Parade. Looks like the same as it has been
Yep.
in years. So, Chief's on board. We're
We have
good.
a motion by Parker, support by Fowler to approve the event permit for the homecoming parade. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? We have none opposed. This Wednesday,
Oh, sorry.
9/18. Okay, moving into our proposed treasurer ordinance.
So, this has been ready for some time. I've been off a little bit and it didn't make it on last month, so this is what me and Mark came up with, kind of just very similar to the clerks. It mirrors the general village law, just puts it into our ordinances. I would put them in as drafts. Didn't know if anyone, or I hope everyone's read through them, reviewed them, and had any additions, deletions, changes, alterations, anything they might see fit.
Change the clerk's name.
Yeah, that was, this was drafted well
Well,
before.
you just said it. so
Yeah,
I put it
but,
out.
yep, clerk.
So there's nothing outstanding here outside of the general village law.
Mark?
No.
Yeah.
I make a motion, we accept the proposed ordinance of the Village of Romeo, Macomb County for the treasurer position.
Second.
We have a motion by Rousseau, second by Fowler. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I am opposed, so there's one opposed. You do need to post these. I will help you if need. And then moving in proposed president ordinance.
Same thing with that. Here's the general village law. We'll change the clerk's name in the draft.
I have the same question. Is there anything here that is not already included in general village law?
I will refer to Mark again.
No.
Okay.
I make a motion that we adopt the ordinance of the Village of Romeo in regards to the president ordinance, which follows the General Village Law Act.
Second.
So we have a motion by Rousseau, support by Fowler. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? I am opposed, so we have one. Okay, moving into our flagpole
Real
ordinance.
good. Following up on the ordinances, we started with clerk, treasurer, president. I didn't know if the board was wanting, or if I would look into the ordinance for trustee and write that with Mark's assistance, so we can make it official for all electeds.
So with you mirroring the treasurer and the president ordinance just from general village law, was there did the both of you go into any detail about adding any other things or talk about anything? I don't want to,
No,
Third part of your
we kicked
meeting,
around a
but-
couple different things, and then we figured just like with the clerk too, leave it up to the whole board to make any alterations, complete, and additions, deletions, whatever, from that, and get feedback from this board. So it wasn't just me
correct, right.
writing a sole ordinance, then, being accused of attacking a certain position. So after that, we kind of just stepped back and said, all right, let's mirror it and bring it back and see where we're at with it.
I don't see the need for a trustee ordinance. Again, these are already things already in the law. For us to regurgitate it and spend money on that, to me, just seems we could be doing better things with that money. It's already there. If you wanted to add something to it, then you have an ordinance, you've done something. But you're literally not, you haven't changed anything. To me, it's a waste of money. It's already in the village law. What your duties are as trustees, leave it alone.
I like it as far as from the residents' perspective. It's in with all of our ordinances. It gives them a job description, just something to look at. Yes, they can look at general village law, but do they know to do that? Like if they go into all our ordinances looking for who does what, how does this work? I think it's just a nice reference, and then they can go to general village law from there if they want.
I mean, back to your question, if you think that I feel there should be some changes in what the description of a trustee says, and authorities, powers, whatever they might be from the general village law, yeah, I definitely think there should. I mean, we still talk about general village law, as trustees are supposed to make sure people are tying their horses up in the right place. So, yeah, just looking at the village general law is kind of very vague, right? So yes, I would consider including some additions or changes to some of that. I mean, why we want to make sure people's horses are tied up properly. There's probably not much of a need for us to look into some of that stuff. So, again, it's up to the board.
I guess I have to agree with Megan, though. It's kind of
Yeah, I do too.
just complete redundancy.
And you can't change the law. So I understand your point, the corralling of animals, but you can't take it out of there, it's there.
I know that, but you can refine it differently, or add, or alter, but then like
Make a motion.
you've said, it kind of keeps it all together. So, again, I still sweat off my back.
So in an effort to save money and resources, if we're kind of just regurgitating general village law, I know we did make some corrections to the clerk's ordinance, but if we're looking to similarly do that to the trustees, is there a need to meet with Mark? Can you bring that before us next month and we can take a look at it then? And if we deem it appropriate to roll up the sleeves a little bit at that time, we can do so, but to waste money having you meet with them does seem kind of unnecessary if we're just gonna repeat the same.
Like I said, I would entertain some additions to it from the board, more so than just singly myself. But I guess I kind of also question, and I don't know how many of you have actually compared the village general law to our ordinances, and how much they already currently and continually mirror themselves. So if it's just redundancy, why do we have ordinances at all for some of this stuff, right?
Right.
So there's a favor to, I don't know the word I'm looking for, but having redundancy and having it together, I think only protects and helps. I don't know, Mark, your thoughts on having it separate, keeping it, or?
I respectfully decline to give you my thoughts on
Okay.
it because it wouldn't be a legal opinion, it would be my personal opinion, and you don't pay me for that, so.
I guess I was looking for more from a legal standpoint
Well,
and protecting.
Then let me say this. The
Your
gen-
microphone.
Doesn't have to.
The General Law Village Act is the statute that governs the village. It's your charter, and it's true for every general law village in the state of Michigan. And you don't have a separate charter. Most cities, probably all of them, have a charter that lays out in great detail who has what authority, who can do what, who cannot do something else. It is the template for the running of that particular community. There are charter townships. Washington Township is a charter township. It has a charter. Bruce Township is a general law township. It too is governed by the general, the Township General Law Act. And so you can't change the general law, the General Law Village Act. You can't change it. You can ask or petition your legislators to introduce legislation to change the act. The act has been changed over the years. That happens. You can also become a home rule village if you want, and there's a procedure for that, and you can then develop your own charter. But the General Law Village Act is what provides who has what responsibility to do what, who can do what, who can't do what, and I can't be any clearer than that. And that is my legal opinion.
I'm good either way.
So if we don't do a trustee one, wouldn't that look a little hypocritical that we covered every other group than our own?
That's the way you want to look at it.
It's not that I want to look at it that way, but what would the residents say? You know, you did the president, the clerk. What about you, trustees? You left yourself off of it. And I don't know that, so if it's gonna be a simple two-page document that Mark can whip up, we can give feedback and be done, why not to be consistent and transparent and not hypocritical?
Well, I can see the way that Nolan's, if Justin wants to do it and bring it back to the board next month for us to look at, then it's not, we're not spending any extra money at that point.
Yeah, and we can always move it on to the next month if there are some things that we want to discuss and add at that point. And if though a meeting is warranted at that point, that's fine too, if you're okay with that.
I can try. I should be able to have it done for next month. If not,
Should we table it?
well, if it gets tabled, I may not be here. Right? Next month's October,
Yeah.
then November. I
Mhm.
might be here. I should be here in November, right? Oh, well, depending on when the meeting falls, but,
Probably.
Twentieth.
yeah, so. Well, I'm good. I'll work on it.
Okay.
Thank you. Flagpole.
Okay, moving into our flagpole ordinance, we have the,
We saw this,
if you see the industrial,
yeah, go on.
Nope.
I was gonna say, we saw this a
Have
couple
at it.
months ago, we noticed that it didn't have the right flag square footage or footage for the industrial area. Brought it back to planning, went to the planner, and it was revised with the sufficient based on standard sizes. So that was the only change from what we saw, what was that, 2 months ago, I believe? Or maybe,
2 or 3, yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say maybe 3, but whatever.
June, I think.
So
it might
just
have
the
been,
square
because I wasn't here in
footage
July.
part.
Yeah, it was basically, yeah, change the industrial to 50 and then put the appropriate size of flags or,
See it highlighted, so it's okay.
Yep.
sorry about that. So with that, I'll make a motion to approve the flagpole ordinance as presented.
Support.
we have a motion by Parker, support by Edwards. Could you please call the roll?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess we didn't do for all the other ones, so all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed. We have our Parks and Rec draft lease proposal. This was on last month. We were very busy, so we moved it on to this month. While we're on the topic of Parks and Rec, let me just give a update here regarding this facility and the two storage rooms. Back in January, when this board had passed to lease and to put a lease together, that was never done, which I became aware of in June. So since that time, I've asked Mr. Clark to draft that lease language, passed it on to Parks and Rec. I believe we're waiting on their, similar to us, and waiting on the board to approve it, but we will get there in that signing of that lease of these spaces. Separate topic. This is a draft. Because I can read. This was just a first proposal kind of thing, like, let's get the conversation started. We had our subcommittee back a while ago, then the commission had some change up, reappointments, and now they're picking back up where the last commission left off. They put this out here to us, and that is their hope that we can utilize this proposed agreement as a starting point for any further discussions or negotiations you may deem necessary. And that was from Ms. Kim Duda, who's currently the treasurer for Parks and Rec Commission. Some of the proposed changes are listed here. There's an update to the organization's name and address. I think the biggest thing is the term of the lease. There's a removal of some special meeting language and a removal of first year of lease language throughout the lease agreement. So again, I think the biggest thing here would be the term of the lease, in which they are requesting
5 years.
in section 2. Correct. Currently, we have a 99-year lease that's, I don't even think we're halfway done with it.
Is this the same lease that was the other one, just
That's what these, it's essentially all the same language with those changes that they
like the
pointed out.
original lease we had?
Yep.
Okay, all right.
So I guess the question is, this building that we're sitting in, part of this lease?
No.
And then what then do our special meetings have anything to do with?
At that time, we had meetings in that
Okay,
building.
that's what I assumed, so,
When this was made, we had meetings in the Parks and Rec building.
Okay, so I read through it. It left me with some questions, and I think it might help if we had a more specific diagram, because it lists all the coordinates, and it says unimproved areas, so what are they talking about with that? Tennis courts, basketball courts, softball diamonds, buildings, like, I would like more specifics. Unimproved areas could be a lot, especially getting towards the cemetery. But also, when trying to figure out what all they included, under number 8, use of premises, it also says, the Village of Romeo Board of Trustees shall be provided with space in the buildings on the subject premises for its regularly scheduled monthly meetings. So I'm presuming that's from the old building and the old lease?
Yeah, we used to meet in the,
Okay, so that would be,
Room.
so, in general, I think it needs a fair amount of work.
So you're saying number 8 could be removed completely?
The last, yeah.
Also, does this terminate the old lease then? I don't see that labeled in here.
Right.
I don't know that it terminates it as much as it changes the term of it. Instead of the 99 years for $1 a year, they're asking to do it for a 5-year period.
But I think somewhere in here that we need to make a statement that the old lease is terminated.
yeah, I'm definitely, like, to kind of piggyback on what Trustee Rousseau was talking about, some of this talks about, if it's a lease, how do we have any authority over the Township of Bruce and Washington? Unless we already have a mutual agreement with them to lease the property that falls outside of the village.
Can you say that again? Because
Is-
to me, the lease is with,
Yeah, but under number 8, it talks about
gotcha.
within the Village of Romeo and the Township of Bruce and Washington, who request the use of the facilities. And I thought there might have been somewhere else where it talked about, maybe it was with that undeveloped stuff, where it talked about areas outside of the village.
Yeah, there's a lot of.
The only thing that has my attention is at the top of each one of these pieces is, it says Washington Bruce Romeo Parks. I thought that they'd decided to stick with Romeo Washington Bruce Parks.
Oh, no, that was changed
No.
again at some point.
It was changed again?
Well, back when the discussion was had, it was going to stay Romeo, Washington, Bruce, and somewhere post those discussions, it was rearranged. However, it would be like, do you remember when we considered becoming a city, and our name would have been the Village of the City of Rome, or the Village
They
of...
discussed, yeah.
So essentially, this is what you see on paper, but when you still see their logo, it still says Romeo, Washington, Bruce, 1.
Good, yeah.
This is their, I don't know, but it's their Facebook page. Anyway, they got hacked. Oh, whatever. Drama.
So, and they aren't proposing any type of dollar fee for the lease?
This is what I was sent. So like Miss Judah said, this can be our starting point for further discussions and negotiations. Yeah, to me, if we're gonna be changing from the 99 to 5 years, that is a big difference in what the village, the plans of what we could potentially have to take on at any point in time. This is a big parcel, these are a lot of buildings. Granted, they are keeping them up, but then it would all of a sudden be incumbent upon the village to take over a large property.
Maybe the old lease is just fine.
Yeah, change the name.
Yeah.
I guess I think from the village's point of view, what is in this for the village? If we're looking
Right.
at the best for the village, I'm not quite sure what behooves us to adjust that term.
Yeah, basically, we donated this building for
$1.
for how, basically donated for how long for the use of the Parks and Rec and the Star Transportation for our communities. And now if they're looking at getting out of a lease, which is the upkeep, basically that's what they pay. I agree, Megan, that's, we're looking at a big downfall for the village.
Well, and to me, that allows them to move on, which they could still move on, they would just be beholden to the contract.
I don't think so. Where did it say?
Mark, is there an out in this by either party?
Yeah.
There is not, so you would either have to make this an amendment to the existing lease and amend those provisions if you agreed with the suggestions in these provisions. It could be an amendment to the existing lease, or this lease would be approved and the other one would be rescinded, declared null and void. It would legally be made to go away, but you should not have two leases for the same property.
Was there any specific reason they chose to go with 5 years? Was there any communication?
From discussions from the past commissioners, not this commissioner, it was that is the term that essentially goes along with the bond that's, or the ballot, when they pass the initiative for the tax.
Yeah.
That's the term of it, is it generally, I think it's 4 years, but they threw in the fifth to be able to have time to undo all of the things.
It does say, if a notice of termination is timely given by either party,
Yeah,
it
it's
need
6
not contain the reasons for the termination and the alleged reasons for terminate. So,
That's part of the, this is the updated, that was part of the alterations of the term, right? The term of agreement, so this isn't what's in the original
lease,
lease, right?
right, but
Yeah.
there is a way to get out.
Oh, in this one, I was referencing
Oh, I'm
the
sorry.
original lease.
Okay,
I'm sorry, I should have clarified.
That's okay.
But you're right, though, with this new one here, we're expecting 50, 60 more years, and now we could be looking at 6 months if they want to terminate for no
Right.
reason whatsoever.
My other question was, it's up to the village to bring it up to be in compliance with being barrier-free, as well as building codes, up-to-date building codes, and that's on the village expense. So do we know if there's anything that needs to be made barrier-free, or is there anything we need to do to be in compliance with building codes? Like,
I have not,
would wanna know that, too.
yeah, I've not been brought into two
Guess I want
discussions.
clarification on that, but there's a part of me that has to assume, if I can use that term, that we are, because we have our own building, inspectors and things like that, I would hope that they built it correctly to begin with.
Well, begin with, but now we're talking about barrier-free and current codes. So a lot has changed in that building's
That's what I say,
been built.
I don't know the answer to
Yeah.
that, but
Yeah.
And is that section in the current, or is that new?
in the old contract, who
Because
was
I know
liable?
you highlighted what was changed, but
That was what this email was sent with this attachment, these are the changes that they
They
have
said.
pointed out that, from my understanding, that was all that's been adjusted are these points in this document.
I would,
Would table
I'd say
this.
motion to table, and let's maybe look at this next month with the actual physical current lease
Yeah.
as a side-by-side. And,
Because right now, really, what's in it for us here?
and if we can have any further discussion with them on their intention, just so we know. I mean, if they want this and they are looking at, hey, we want to be gone in 5 years.
Do you want our subcommittee? I mean, we had, jump on back into a subcommittee. It was Nolan, Nathan, and myself, or do you just want to bring it back next month to this board?
Yeah,
I'd say bring it back and let us
Yeah, we could just
compare first.
Compare the
before
two
we-
side by side and see
Yeah.
if that's all that's actually changed.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you want to stick, not reform the subcommittee if it was dissolved, but if, I mean, Nolan, if you,
Well-
I don't know if there's a contact, if Megan, if you don't have the time, if maybe Nolan, if you want to reach out and just ask them what their intentions are. Or I can do it if it doesn't matter, just so we know. I mean, if we
Yeah.
approve this, do they want to physically be done in 5 years, or are they planning on a renewal? Just so we
Yeah.
know.
I can respond back to Ms. Duda and ask her that, so just basically asking for their intention, but more so around the term.
Yeah.
We should have that old lease anyway. That wasn't that long ago that we had it in our packets, right? It was probably the beginning of the year, maybe. I've got it somewhere.
I can bring it back.
Yeah, thank you. Motion to table, or do we even need to motion? No.
Support.
Okay, we got a motion to table.
We have a motion to table by Parker, support by Rousseau. All in favor?
Aye.
I'll bring it back next month for you. I have back in here the parking lot engineering proposal. I brought this back, as since our last meeting, the DDA had a meeting, and they have agreed to pay essentially half, put $70,000 towards the proposal, for the downtown parking lots. So I didn't know if we wanted to move it still, but I wanted everyone to have an option.
Well, I kind of wonder if we're missing a page, unless the map is,
I only put the one downtown map, I did not include the wastewater map, because it doesn't have, what they're proposing to join in with is not wastewater.
okay, so this is page 1 on the left, but the second page says page 3 of 4.
What do you have?
So,
You should have do you have task 2? There's a task 1, and then there's a task 2.
No, I don't think I
Okay,
moved it.
No,
but then you have 3.
we have,
no, just task 1.
Just
yeah,
one.
well, we have page 1 and page 3. We don't
Okay.
have 2 and 4.
I apologize, misprinted. It's still the same thing you saw last month. Page 2 talks about design and bidding phase. Page 1 and 3, you have the parking lots listed, and, again, specifically the DDA lots at the top, not talking wastewater.
So I guess how practical, is this something that is going to move after this, when the bidding starts? Or is it something that we have funding to move with, to do all this?
We
This
kind of
will-
need to see the results.
Yeah,
of-
this is
of-
the first phase of getting to that, when can we do the next, when can we actually feasibly redo the parking lots?
Well, then I guess part of it then do we need to include the bidding phase of this? If we're just looking to
I see what you're
obtain,
saying, yeah.
you know, there's parts of this talk about moving forward with a project, right? Bidding phases, obtaining
Yep.
bids and stuff, do we? if we're
Well,
just
if we
looking
don't
for-
want to, we don't
I
do
mean-
that phase, then they don't bill us for it, and we save that money. I mean, that's not going to be incurred until you literally bid it, so that could be a while from now, when you lock in that bidding price.
I just-
I don't have the previous proposal with me, like with all of the pages, so I feel I'm a little unprepared to make a decision, because I thought there was something more to this.
Is this something we have to move on right away, or can we table this till next month?
No, I just brought it back as the DDA, they would like to move it on. They see the importance of the parking lots. If you park in them and you walk in them, you can see the importance of they getting redone sooner than later. And They have, in good faith, jumped in with us on this. I don't think that's gonna change. I don't think that that's like a only good for this month decision. But I just wanted us, if that would change anyone's mind, to continue to move this forward, these improvements.
Yeah. I mean, to me, ultimately, the work will need to be done regardless. I know we're missing a couple of the tasks that are outlined. It even says in the beginning description that the proposal should include several phases of work, preliminary investigation, and design. So it doesn't even really mention the bidding phase. So I guess if there's a savings there after after step 3, we'd be able to determine what course of action we're gonna take at that point.
And then I
Anyway.
guess the next part of that would be, do we feasibly have the money to move forward with doing the project? But then, if we're like, we're just gonna do this phase, and then we're gonna wait, like we've seen with the roads and heard with the roads, and if you wait, this is all gonna change, and it's gonna have to all.
No,
be
this
redone.
won't change. This is,
When
we're
you're
getting an
talking about
idea
the
of,
design and the work that needs to be done,
the work that needs to be done won't change. It's falling apart, you have to redo it. What will
so
change,
what percentage though?
what will change though is what it will cost to fix it. So a road today is $100,000, a road next year is
I'm saying the cost of
$200,000.
material, cost of labor, that I understand.
That doesn't
I'm just
change
talking-
what we're doing right now.
What about the design would change?
Not so much the layout or the outline, but if you're taking a section like we learned with the roads, right, that's rated at and I don't remember the numbers, let's say it's at a 10, and it needs 0 work, but it's at an 8, and it needs some work, and at a 6, it needs more. At what rating and all that, right? So if we wait 2 years, and everything's now at a 1,
Have you-
everything we just
Would you
put
really rate
together.
them any more than a 1, any of them?
I don't know, it's
I know.
not what I do.
Yeah.
I'll quote someone else and say it's not my job, or I'm not
I
licensed
I
to
would,
that,
I
right?
would feasibly say church parking lot. That one we can say is not gonna be needing.
Even that one, we should be upkeeping by next year. I mean, we're gonna talk about the capital asset later, but.
So 141,000 is just to get, it's not even doing the work. It's just to get the plan together.
Yeah, it's,
Okay, and then down below, items not included, it says, it talks about the stormwater improvements to meet the requirements, all right. And if they are identified as being needed, HRC will provide an amendment to this proposal for the task. So my question or concern is that when we got into the roads project, there's so many curbs that needed to be fixed. And I'm by far not an expert, but in the back of my mind, I was going, why didn't anyone notice that? Why didn't our engineer and the group that was putting all this together realize all these curbs had to be done? So to see something like these things aren't included and we'll bill you for it later, or we'll tell you about it later, is a little unsettling to me. I'd rather have, if they're gonna go forward with this, I kinda wanna know those things as much as possible. Not, we'll bill you for it later, because I'm a little disenchanted with the number of curbs that weren't identified that needed to be repaired. And I think an engineering company should be able to find that. So that's my concern on that piece. And 141,000 just to get started. I see that the DDA wants to throw in 70,000, but all of these lots are within the DDA. So,
except for the sewage.
Yeah,
But that's not
that's
part of
not,
them.
that's
It's
not
not
part of
part
their offer,
Correct,
yeah.
yeah.
yeah. And I don't have the other pages in front of me. So I make a motion, we table it so the other pages are here. So we can see the full amount of information that's being asked of us.
Support.
And just to be clear, there's only 1 page missing, and you did see it last month, but we will include it.
Absolutely, President.
Do you want
Poznanski,
it
but
next
you would
month?
not accept documents for us if they weren't complete. So I offer you that same respect.
Are we tabling it until next month?
Yes.
Well,
Or did you want to,
Trustee Russell, so in regards to, some of the additions, the stormwater work and things that need to be reworked, to me, it's a bit of a chicken and egg situation where we won't find that out until they begin that investigation anyway. It's a big cost, but that's what the cost is for them to do that research and to figure out intensity necessary, and then to what scope do we need to repair these parking lots or upkeep, so. In my mind, this has to happen either way. I mean, we have a nice offer to take 50% of it away, or a little bit less than 50%. I understand we do want to see all the documents that we saw last month, but to me, this needs to happen either way.
If I could just piggyback, I mean, you're saying we're looking at roughly saving 50%. I would argue the DDA has been collecting tax and gaining money to do stuff like this, and not just have different events here and there. So I would argue that they're looking at saving 50%, not so much the village, because I feel that a lot of this should fall back onto the DDA as far as the tax and everything that they've been acquiring, and now we're looking at paid parking.
Right, but ultimately there are
And we talked
lots.
about a multifaceted method to accomplish stuff like this.
Yeah.
So where's that plan, and when are we gonna see the full end result of that and future earnings from whatever is gonna happen? And how is that gonna offset? And should the village then look at, does the DDA want a loan to do the work? I mean, I think that's what happened when they acquired the stuff behind FAMS, in between FAMS and the old ZACO. I think there was a loan, and the village went in with the DDA, and then the DDA backed out on that. The village ended up
The
having to
village
pay-
co-signed essentially.
And the
We
village
had to
had to pay it
bail them
off.
out.
So,
It's fine. This isn't
Yeah.
gonna, 1 month, putting it till next month is not a problem. I would just like to see this actually get accomplished, though. We walk these parking lots every day, all of us. We can see the need.
yeah.
So isn't that what the paid parking is gonna help support, is this?
It will help. You can see what this just first initial phase is gonna cost, if they even make that much money in the first year.
I thought they gave us some numbers.
They were south of 200, I remember that.
There was an estimate that if each space, there's 72 spaces that are proposed to be paid out of 283. So assuming they're only used for 1 hour and turned over twice per day, that's a potential revenue of $52,000 a year. Hopefully some of them turn over a little more, but that's what you'd be looking at. And again, to Justin's point, to be able to really analyze where that money's gonna go and how it's gonna be effective, we still need to look at what our costs are gonna be regardless, so I understand your point,
But
but,
this is one of those costs,
yeah.
right? That, where's the future plan for the parking, right? The subcommittee was formed, working with the DDA, which, we all know I wasn't 100% for the paid parking, but this is where we're going. Where's the end result? What else are we doing? And I'm not trying to throw you out, but, you know, the DDA, and when Danielle was up here, talked about a multifaceted approach to this. Well, what else are we doing?
If we don't know the scope, how are we gonna
Right.
ever make a
You
plan?
won't
Well, you know
know-
right now.
You won't
there's
know the phases until
150,000.
you know the amount. Once we get this
I
back
know,
and we
but
start
right
to
now,
see
it's
the
a cost of
scope.
150, and I'm not just talking about just the project, but where's the approach? What else are we gonna do besides just paid parking to, if we need funds for maintaining, or is that the only approach, was just to charge for parking?
The multifaceted approach was they offered us 70 grand. I mean, there's another approach. They pony up some money.
Again, with the whole scope, the whole plan, there was a lot of different ideas for gaining capital for parking and parking zones that I think you talked about they were doing in Rochester and different things. Well, was that the only step we were taking, was paid parking, or was there gonna be more to that? To cover costs like this? Or is it just paid
Yes, they're gonna
parking
cost
and-
share. That's what I see from, they're gonna cost share, and they're also gonna offer permits.
They're gonna share the cost of repairing the parking lots too?
That's what's in front of us. They're gonna share in, this is the initial. I do see more coming.
Can we address
I
the
wouldn't see
motion
why they
we
wouldn't.
have on the table?
So, but they haven't provided anything formal yet? You just kind of anticipate it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I see no other reason why we wouldn't see them acting in good faith now and continue in that.
Yeah, it's.
I have nothing to present to them to ask for further this moment. Once this would be done and we would see a full scope, if it was phased or it was all in one, that's when I would say, hey, now that we have this here, what else could we continue to work on? But- Okay, I guess we'll just table till next month.
Isn't there a motion on the table? or-
There is motion to
There
table
is.
until,
Oh,
yep,
okay.
next month.
Second that motion.
So we have a motion by Rousseau, was it a second by
Already
Parker?
seconded, Yeah.
Well, he's going to write it.
And any of those comments, if you email them to me, just so we can talk about them at depth at our next meeting too, would be appreciated.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Do we have any opposed?
Suppose.
One opposed by Bartholomew. Okay, moving into our new business, we have appointed administrator versus elected discussion.
So, yep, this was added by me. I started hearing from a couple residents and a couple conversations with some trustees. Thought at this point, and this doesn't reflect Jamie in any way, shape, or form, just what we had currently just witnessed with or experienced with our past clerk. I figured the discussion was warranted again. I know there were some people at this table at that time that were in the past, when President Malzahn brought it up, that were in favor, some that opposed. I figured it was something we could put out there. The village residents, not all of them, a few, asked me to have this discussion, so I put it on there to open it up to the board for discussion. Thoughts?
Well, I guess I personally have always been for the appointed administrator, because in that case, it no longer requires the person that assumes that capacity needs to be a village resident. You can actually go ahead and appoint whatever kind of talent you want to. You could get the best person out there for the job. It doesn't have to be the best person within the village limits.
Yeah.
And I guess that's with Christine, and even before that, we talked about that, and also with the treasurer's position.
Yeah.
That also does not need to be an elected position. So I've always looked at those as potentially being appointed, because you aren't limited by the village limits.
Yeah.
And you can get the best person out there.
Yeah, just
And
to-
you can hire and fire them also. So if you get into the cap and trip situation, you don't have to wait for the next election to come around.
In the past, I was against that, but I totally agree with you, man. Compared to what we just went through, it's the way to go.
Yeah, I mean, if anything, to the improvement of Mr. Lucero here, the quality of job he's doing, the thoroughness, and some of the concerns he's raising are all the more reasons for me that the treasurer, the clerk, and having an appointed administrator are all that more important. If someone not thorough, someone who doesn't do a good job, let me rephrase. If Mr. Lucero is not available, we're in a much tougher position than we are right now, and being dependent on a qualified, available, local person for the end of time being available it's so slim. You know, we're lucky we have someone who's willing to do the job, let alone do it well.
Well, in an elected position, the only job credential you have is you happen to live here.
And being good
That's
standing.
it. You might not know anything about the job.
Good standing, 18, live here. But yes, you're right.
Couple requirements.
Couple more years, Andrew can do it.
Yeah.
I think to your point, Nolan,
sorry.
the fact that we do have people sitting here that were not in that spot and you would be taking it away from is something to also consider.
What do you mean?
That right now you do have Jamie, that right now you do have me here, we're willing to do the jobs, and Mr. Lucero has said he would put his name on the ballot in the fall. So
I
to pull
respect
it,
that, and if I could just ask Mark real quick
I
on
was
that.
speaking.
Would this, I don't think this could go into effect before the next election, where he's gonna be on the ballot. I think
Correct.
this is something that would be after that, because I don't think we can take that away because it's already on the ballot. Could you,
That's correct, and there's another caveat to that, and it's in the portion of the statute that you included. If you adopt such an ordinance, there is a right of referendum, and so the ordinance would not become effective till at least 45 days after its adoption, and if a sufficient number of signatures, and there's a formula for it,
2%.
then it would be put on the ballot, and the the village residents, the village registered voters would get to vote on it. So you can't leapfrog or avoid that requirement. It's part of the statute.
Is there a process that we could just put this on, not at the current, because I don't think we have the time, but just put it on ballot language for a future election to just let the residents decide and not just this board?
I don't think so. I want to take a closer look at it, because the entirety of the portion of the statute, I don't believe is in here, but it says the council may employ a village manager, and then it talks about the ordinance. And what my concern would be is that if you put it on the ballot, you cannot put advisory, at least in this situation, there are exceptions, but you can't put advisory questions on the ballot. And so if you put it on the ballot and the voters said, no, we don't want it, you could still adopt an ordinance and say, well, you're gonna get it anyway. And so my concern would be that the question would be of an advisory nature, and you're not allowed to spend money on that. You're charged with the responsibility of making decisions in the offices that you hold. So if the way to have it voted on, I guess, the only clear one I can see at the moment without taking a closer look at it, is you adopt the ordinance. I wouldn't recommend that you do that tonight because you don't have such an ordinance in front of you, so I would caution against that. If you adopt the ordinance, then enough people in the village who may be interested would sign a petition and it would be submitted, and then it would go to the voters, and if the voters reject it, you can't override that. So then it's not advisory. I would also, in that regard, I don't want to say recommend, but I would suggest that you think about, you no longer conduct your own elections. The village doesn't. I don't mean you personally, but the village used to conduct its own elections. And so it would, there'd be a primary in February and the general in March. Well, the state legislature in its infinite wisdom did away with that, and now your elections are conducted by the township. And in this instance, if you needed to have a special election, if you adopt the ordinance and the petition is filed, the proper petition, then you'll have to pay Washington Township to conduct your election. Maybe Bruce as well, I suspect not, because it would just be solely a village election. But and I think Washington being the most populous township in which the village lies, that Washington Township would be the one to conduct it if the procedures were followed, and you would have to pay for that.
Okay.
It's not a good thing or a bad thing, it's just a thing.
It's a thing.
Megan, I kind of wanted to clarify, just based off your comments. I know you got cut off, so you can go after me if you'd like. At least right now, I'm speaking more in regards to the position of the treasurer and clerk. I know we have great, fantastic people that are willing to do the work right now, but the focus can't be on just what we're going to do in the next 2-year period before a new clerk has to be elected and a new president. But in 30, 40 years, Jamie might be in Lansing by then. You know, we might not have a Jamie at that period. There might not be a qualified candidate at that period. To me, at the end of the day, it's a professional role that if someone's not doing their job, we don't want to be stuck with someone for another 3.5 years if they're being negligent or not doing a good job. It's a professional position that to me, I'd like to have a little more say over their ability to do the job, and basically have them be fireable if they're not doing a quality job.
And I do apologize for cutting you off. It wasn't to cut you off, it was to clarify that it wouldn't be affecting this current election. Apologize.
I can't say that I would disagree with your statement that it's not about right here and today. I mean, we do have to think forward. However, I also would caution us doing knee-jerk reaction, because we had, for the last however many 100 years, and we have one bad egg, we instantly go, oh, we're going to change it. I don't know, maybe it's just caution and time. Maybe we figure out in the next 2 years, think about it and see if that's where the need needs to go. I don't
I
know.
don't know, I'm sorry.
I agree.
Jamie, in Jamie's comments earlier, he said he feels it's 50 years worth of neglect. So I don't think it's, if he's correct, this one moment in time isn't really just this clerk. It goes back many years.
And some of that is neglect through, I mean, recession. It's not intentional. It's batten down the hatches and we were holding on for dear life and paying for what we could at that time. And then after that, we never kind of got out of that mindset and we've continued to just hold on and not improve. And now we have infrastructure that is failing and we have in general, it feels like we have a board that's holding us back from making those improvements. That's where we're at. We need to, although consciously and very methodical and plan out those improvements, we need to make these improvements.
Yeah, I don't think there should be any knee-jerk reaction. It's good, productive conversation for us to be talking about it. But I think we're at the baby steps of anything even happening anyway.
I would agree. I don't see anything happening before this current election. And the board might look different after this current election. And, yeah, again, just good discussion. I wanted to have every trustees, everyone on the board, an opportunity to voice their thoughts and opinions and let the residents know, yeah, we hear you. You know, we see what just happened and this is where our thoughts, our minds are at. So, I don't know. Nate, did you have any?
No, I don't have anything to add to that.
Is that our discussion?
Yep.
I think we're good.
Okay, capital asset policy discussion. This is in here. Again, it was one of those things like the ethics policy that when I found a month when we didn't have 20 things on there, I wanted to throw this idea at you guys. At budget time, we made a budget policy. So here's something as we move forward, and we're getting these, we have our SEMCOG grant to go over planning, an asset inventory, trying to get up to speed on all of that, revamping, bringing up to terms. Essentially, we had the SAW grant, we did an asset manager, a capital improvement for the wastewater. And then we took that and went, cool. And we've not been checking back. We've made a few improvements, again, knee-jerk improvements. We didn't look at that policy or that plan and go, we're going to start targeting these items. We reacted to the items. So we do need to do a little revamp there. Our iron removal with our wells, like we could see, one of our wells went out a couple of years ago. What is our plan there? With the rest of the facility, it was built 30 years ago. What is the plan in that upkeep? We just had one of the, and I don't know the proper name, but the computer screen, the control, that was $30,000 for one item. Literally, the same week we replaced that, the next one went. So we're at life here. So I wanted to put this in front of you guys just to get the idea rolling in your head, getting an asset management policy that we will ask this board, because again, we won't always be here. There's certain times that you review this every few years, that we consider what is an asset, how much money is, I mean, this table's an asset, this, you know, but what is actually needs to be put into the plan and what qualifies. So I put a few different things in here. The GFOA is the Government Finance Association of America. They are basically the standard when it comes to government financing. There is a Michigan MGFOA. However, they all refer these sorts of things back to their hierarchy of the GFOA. I also put in here a couple examples. One of them a little more detailed than the other. The one was just a very basic management policy example from their website, and the other one was literally from the city of Coldwater, Michigan, and their Board of Public Utilities. And theirs is a little more in-depth as opposed to the one is kind of just gives you a plug and play things to look at and put in your numbers and your items. So I just wanted to bring this before everybody, start the conversation on it, and as we move forward with all of our asset management and our capital improvement, start crafting something like this for our own village. It kind of, and like the SAW grant and the wastewater CIP, this, the hope would be to stop what we did that last time and go, okay, great, we did that, here it is, and then don't pay attention to it. With a policy, we would be charging ourselves to redo something every 3 years, or asking the planning commission to weigh in and working together, getting out of our silos and looking at the village together and at the future of what we all hope to see.
I think it's worth discussion, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the most important things we could probably do as a board, is protecting the amount of assets we have. I mean, if this had its own, we had a capital asset board, I think they'd meet twice as much as we would. There's so much to go over. I mean, where do you even start? Even to devise, even if we have a policy in place, just to analyze the assets we have and devise a plan of what's appropriate and how to begin to work with them and manage them, it's seems insurmountable. It's very, very
It is
in-depth.
overwhelming, and that's where, just in going after the grants and trying to encourage the planning commission in this creation of a CIP, trying to take steps somewhere, we need to start somewhere, and maybe we start with the plug-and-play one, and over time, we can get it a little more in-depth as we get these asset inventories started, and we get a CIP started. It is, did you ever end up applying for that?
I missed the deadline. I had like 2 days after you
Well,
sent
there's
the
more.
email, and I had- I
Anybody
thought I
that
had
wants to
more.
apply, I took the MIC AMP as soon as I was in office as president. Anybody that wants to do it, it specifically talks about asset management. And to your point, it is, from where we're standing, there is a long way to go to get up that mountain, but we have to start somewhere. And we are taking the appropriate steps, but we need to continue to take them.
And what would you suggest be the next step?
At this point, crafting how we would like it to look, I could just throw something together from these, pick and choose the different points, and then we start talking through it. What we consider to be a capital asset, what is our money threshold? How many years would we like to put in there that we would be reviewing?
Maybe a good place to start would be like water and sewage, because you've got, we just replaced a pump, so you kind of have an idea of how much a pump's gonna cost, because you're gonna have fresh quotes for all that kind of stuff. So how much would you, what then is the life expectancy of that pump? And what's it gonna take you to save $5,000 a year, $10,000 a year to get to the life of that pump, and what it's gonna cost at that point?
And that's where the SEMCOG grant, the planning grant, we will be getting all of that information come springtime, very detailed. So if we can get this started, and then when that info comes in, we can kind of try and marry them up and really nail it down.
That could include all the pipes under.
Oh, we have a lot of infrastructure.
There's a lot of, yeah.
We don't really realize what's under our feet and how many
Yeah.
millions of dollars are down there, that it's very important for your waste to get to the treatment plant.
Yes.
It's very important for the water to get into your home, and that we have well and we have property. We have our water tower, which, to know if anyone's noticed how nice and shiny it looks. That just next year, again, we put that in, I was not here at that time. I think Matt was on the board. I don't know if Zach was on the board when the water tower got here.
Yeah, I was.
We have, looking at next year, just some basic upkeep is about, what I've been told so far is 300,000. We need to continue to maintain what we have.
Agreed.
Do we have a software program, or is there one that helps manage all of that? Do you know?
There's a GIS. Okay, so apparently, we have a basic, I guess is probably the best way to describe it, use of a GIS system. We do need to apply to be able to have it's like getting the free app versus the paid app. You have more use to it. And we do need to do that. Al had just sent me some quotes recently. So essentially, whenever we do, so with this road work, there's certain sewer pipes that got relined. That goes into that, that asset management, what that wastewater had created back with the SAW grant, so that we can verify this work has been done now. But we have the very basic plug and play. I would like to get the GIS. I mean, moving forward, the tree board gets this grant. You can put into the GIS all of those trees. If we could also move forward with a whole complete sidewalk assessment of the village, that sort of stuff can get put into it. That's just the more popular one. That's the current one that our engineers use. I'm sure there's others, but that's the only one I'm familiar.
And maybe hopefully, you know, if we adopt a policy, instead of trying to take on this massive undertaking, we can divide and conquer and maybe set a 6-month period where DPW has to give us a report, police has to give us a report, the tree board can give us their, you know, their coverage survey, but to divide and conquer and put it to the department heads that they're responsible for letting us know by this date the types of assets they have, and maybe an analysis on them. I mean, I know everyone's swamped, but to assume we can take on this whole project alone is,
I mean, it's gotta be stuff most of them know. I know Chief.
I would assume
came
so,
out
but it's gotta be
very quickly and brought up
combined.
his vest and the vehicles and
Right.
stuff, and he, I think they should be able to do that pretty quickly.
Well, because
But it's gotta be
they
at
might
one
have
source.
that, you know, already in
A lot of
built
that
into
stuff.
their own budgets. Because for like, for a car, I mean, they gotta know that this car's only good for 5 years, and then they gotta come up with the money to buy a new one out of their budget.
right.
And so they're probably already doing some of that, at least
Yeah,
I'm
there's
sure
some
to
of
a
it
small
done.
degree.
Like putting it all together. and
But I
having it all
doubt
housed
wastewater
together.
treatment plants do it,
Yeah.
you know, type of thing.
Because that's where the engineers come in. They go, okay, you put this pump in 10 years ago, that, you're not gonna ask Al to go, Al, how much life does that have left? The engineers come in, they look at it, they look at the whole scope of stuff, they give the actual life expectancy. They could give us, I feel like, for what we already have our staff doing, they could give us a good surface.
Yeah, the day-to-day stuff.
Yeah.
But if we're gonna be asking them to really dig in there, they don't have time for that.
Well,
That's
that's what
where,
Nolan says, you could be, you know, there for a long time, big undertaking. in a
yes,
way.
that's where going to get this grant money was very important. Because especially the big hill that we're going after, it needs to be as detailed as possible. It's not just about life expectancy, it's also about the criticality. That maybe this is only $5, but if that $5 thing breaks, maybe down the line, that costs us $1 million. So it is important, granted, this is cheap, but that is at the top of the list to repair because of what it affects down the way. So there's different scales on all of those things. And that's the kind of report that we'll get and can start working towards, and then it will be a lot cheaper to just update it, kind of like we are with the SAW grant. It was already created, the foundation is there. Every 2 to 3 years, you look back at it, you sit down with the department heads, of which we are gonna be doing with the SEMCOG one. What has been done, Al? What else still needs to be done? And then you just update it. Way less work and way cheaper, but we're starting at the bottom with a lot of things.
Right.
Good info.
Okay, I guess I will start crafting. It's very nice to be able to have more free time on my hands, that I can dig into these things that I can see that the village has needed and that I walked into with the intention to do, and now I have the time to do it. Moving into our last item, the rules of procedure, you'll find that towards the back of your packet. It should be just the next item.
Yep. So, I have noticed that here and there, we've said things like, oh, we should do this, or we should do that, or we should try this, or change that. And most of those things are related to the rules of procedure. So now might be a good time to just get them in order, especially with the new clerk, and kind of go over them and refine a few. And I have a few in mind. And I've also taken input from other folks if you want to speak up. But essentially, we have, I'm going to start from conduct of meetings, B, number 2, under unfinished business. In the past, and this is probably more for the clerk, In the past, some of our unfinished business has fallen off and we've had to come back and ask, even though like it's not gonna be done for a few months or a couple weeks or the next meeting. I think it would be helpful to leave it there until we know we have finished it and it's done, and then take it off.
So maybe leave the agenda item unfinished and
Yeah.
in parentheses put no update or,
Yeah, whatever.
Oh, okay.
Just so it
So if
stays
something's
on the
tabled, it
agenda.
has to be on the next.
or if it's
Yeah,
unfinished,
just so it
even if it's
doesn't-
not tabled, kind of like
Yeah.
Rattel, right? We made a motion to do something, totally came back different, it's on there,
It's a reminder, yeah.
and it's just bookmarked as an official record, I like that.
Right. The next one down, under approval of bills, and it says credit card statements. It is happening now, but it took some effort to get corresponding receipts to go with the credit card. So if there are charges on the credit card, I think it should be in writing that the corresponding receipts be provided with it, so that we know. And then under council member reports, a council member report shall not exceed 3 minutes, unless time is allowed. And I had clerk and treasurer included in that. Right now it just says council member,
Okay.
but if we could include clerk and treasurer.
I mean, is there a problem with this now, or?
Sometimes the reports get long. Yeah.
Guess I haven't noticed it that much.
Oh, okay. And then under written submissions, E, public comment, number 2. I know some people have mentioned if someone gives a written submission and it needs to be read out loud, it's been suggested that that also remain within the 3-minute timeline.
I'm sorry.
E, public comment, number 2, written submission.
Okay,
So just for consistency,
3 minutes.
Yeah, that's a
Okay.
good point, because even though we haven't had a problem with it, if I wrote a 5-page paper, she has to
Yeah.
read it.
right.
There has
Right.
been, yeah.
Seriously?
Well,
No,
yeah,
there hasn't.
I guess we have had some long ones.
We've had a couple. Yeah. Doozies. Yeah. And then, I didn't mark it, but FOIA. I don't remember where it was. Right now, the trustees have to FOIA information that we need. If we have questions or something we wanna know specific to the board and what's happening, not for our own reasons as residents. And I'd like to propose that we don't necessarily have to FOIA the information, but at least give reasonable notice or come into the office and be able to get that information with reasonable notice.
As long as this pertains to village business.
Village business. Yeah, not personal. Yeah.
So what did you propose, like, the procedure would be, like a couple days in advance, or?
You'd have to reach out and say, I have these questions, I need this information. Now, I'm all for if I ask Jamie X, Y, and Z, and he just emails it back to me with my email. I'd say, hey, Jamie, can you email me this when, before the next meeting or something? Instead of having to go in and FOIA information that may be relevant for another meeting. Or just go in and say, these are the things I need. If it's there and available, fine. If not, it'll be a couple of days. I'm not sure, but.
Do you know if there was like if there was a purpose or a reason for it having to go through the FOIA
Yes,
formality?
yes, there was.
Even as
Because-
trustees?
Going back to what Jamie was talking about, trustees were not exactly encouraged to cross that line. Because at times, certain members of the board would go in and start working on things for their own projects and consume all the employees' time. So the employees would start to complain. So that's why the FOIA came about, excuse me. And so,
I would say in general, whenever I have been contacted, if it has to do with a general item that this council is working on, you need a contract, something that would be within the purview,
Yeah.
always handing it over.
I'm just telling you why it was done, because
It could be
some
abused.
people would go in there and just totally consume the employee's time, looking for this file, looking for that file, and just, for their own, whatever they were gonna do with it. And, so that's why the FOIA came about, and that's why our trustees have not been encouraged to go back there for years.
I guess I ask in more of a, from more of like a legal purview, but even as trustees, this might be a bad question. Do we have the right to just, should we have to go through the FOIA process like any other resident? Do we have the right just to view whatever might be behind
This
it?
is one of the only municipalities I know of that requires their board to FOIA to obtain information that's needed to do your job.
Like villages or just? any
Municipalities in general.
So
municipality?
trustees are empowered to basically have anything at their fingertips that's filed or put away.
Well, no, I wouldn't say that though either.
No, I mean,
If
within-
you wanted to
within
call
reason.
up and
I mean,
ask
if it's related
about,
to something we need for the next meeting.
Right. If I had a passion, I wanted to research something to maybe add it as an agenda item, I'm free to go in and ask for whatever I want. Not whatever I want,
Yeah,
but
I mean, if you send an
something
email or
pertaining to what I
something,
want.
or if there's access, I don't see any reason why you wouldn't be able to access a computer that has this information if you wanted to.
Right.
Maybe not some of the secured stuff, but within reason.
I'm
I
just
mean,
curious,
I don't know,
open-ending
the
it might
ordinance
lead to abuse down the line, sorry, Justin.
but I think that's what Matt's
Jamie,
trying to
you might wanna
refer
ask
to.
your employees about that. I'm just saying, there's a reason for
Yeah,
it.
then they feel like, well, now we have 7 more bosses to come in and tell us what to do right now.
Right, if it's abused, it could create
I
a
think it
big
could be-
headache.
Oh, sorry.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Be written in on how that process works. Maybe we don't have to FOIA, but if an email sent to president, clerk, or whoever that is, one of the elected officials to, at some point I need this information, if I can get it by X date. If it's written on how that process is, it's not just
It's not
walk in and be like, I
unreasonable.
need this right now.
Yeah,
That seems unacceptable. I would
Right.
agree.
yeah.
But if there's a process in place that is more convenient to this board than a FOIA that can sit for a lot longer than the next meeting, right?
Yeah.
And you don't have the information that you feel you need to do the job effectively, or access to a computer or a login where you can go in and access what you need.
Right, maybe we can limit it by amount of requests or documents in a certain, I don't wanna waste Jamie's whole day looking for 1940 documents on Rattel Street, so there's gotta be a balance, a limitation where he might just not be able to fulfill the request in a certain period of time.
Right.
There's gotta be a balance.
Yeah,
I
I don't
think
think
it all
that's-
sounds good. Jamie, talk to your employees. Because they get overwhelmed, they got all this work to do, and now you got someone sitting in there at one of their desks, asking for information over and over again, and now they gotta get up and go find it over and over again.
Again, I think if it's
And
written in.
that's
here
what
from the
ends up
board,
happening. You get people that
policy or
abuse it.
Procedure on how that happens, where it's, you're not asking the staff, you're requesting from the clerk or president or treasurer.
I think that's fair.
And that's written in, and if it's something they feel they can do within a timely manner to get it to you by your Sunday, if not, respond, I don't think I'm gonna be able to get to this.
If you're asking for one thing, that's fine.
Yeah, I'm just saying.
But that's not what happens. It gets abused, and you get people that spend hours in there.
Well, I think in the rules of
the
procedure, we
past.
could specify that you have to go through the FOIA coordinator, not just whoever happens to be in the office at the moment. And that would eliminate any other person from being asked for it. It has to go through the FOIA coordinator. That person has access, they can.
It sounds
follow
great.
up.
Sounds great.
Okay, great.
I'm just telling you, in reality, it doesn't work.
Yeah, we could probably say that about that. Okay, and then the last one was authorization for contacting the village attorney. Similar thought process, but not a carte blanche kind of thing. There have been times where I've had questions, or other trustees have had questions, or situations, and it would be nice to have some type of arena or some set schedule, nothing major, where if we had trustee related, not anything else, but trustee related questions, that we could ask Mark for an opinion or feedback, well, not an opinion, excuse me, Mark doesn't give opinions, But,
Oh, no, I give opinions, I don't give personal opinions.
oh, okay. Mark would give a legal opinion or a legal thought or something that we could ask specifically
Well,
related to.
again, that would be new, because historically, that has always, since the Marion days, been discouraged.
If I'm expected to
Because
do
Mark
this-
is getting paid by the village, and if he has multiple trustees calling him for his thoughts, all of a sudden now, he's spending all this time, and the village is getting billed for it.
I think you missed what I said about having a specific, Wednesday at 2, 20 minutes or something. Not a call Mark whenever you feel like it. And frankly, the first line of defense would be the clerk or the president. You go to them first and ask a question if you think they can answer it. But if it's a legal thing and we have parameters in place,
That's the way,
we have a job to do.
that's the way it's always been
We need to be able
handled.
to do it.
It's always been handled through the clerk or through the village president.
There's a practical consideration for not having ad hoc contact between trustee and legal counsel, and that is that if somebody, and I'll use myself, it doesn't matter who sits in this chair, who the attorney is, it doesn't matter who sits in your chairs, who might be the requester, but the practical difficulty is if Matt calls me up and says, hey, Mark, what about this? And I tell him, and then he comes to the meeting, he's the only one that knows my answer. Nobody else knows it, and he says, well, Mark said this. And then somebody says, well, what about that, Mark? And the point is that you can get a lot of sand in the cogs of the wheels, if you will, because everybody, you should all have the same information at the same time. At least that's my view of it, so that you don't get to, or are at least inhibited from trying to use a legal answer or an opinion about a legal matter in a political way. And I don't mean that pejoratively. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but what I am saying is it can be very murky and it may not be as efficient as you would think it would be at the outset. Let's just ask Mark, okay, so I say this, and then somebody says, well, I would have asked him this question. And then the point is, again, I know I'm repeating myself, but I think it's important as a practical matter, you should all have the same information at the same time.
Correct.
I like what you're saying, I guess I don't want to say I'd argue, but I would, if we're all presented new information at the meeting, then I think it should be more of a common practice to not be so rushed then to make decisions. And I'm just saying, if we take what Mark, our legal counsel, is giving us and sat back and said, okay, let's table this. Does it need an answer today so that you have time to process, maybe do a little more research based on what our legal counsel just said, instead of not having that information before so I could make a decision.
The pace, I'm not trying to interfere with or suggest the pace of what you do, the actions you take or that you don't take should be changed.
Well, I am. I'm the one that's saying, now, I'm not saying putting it on you, I'm just saying if I don't have all the information ahead of time and I'm presented new information at a meeting, I may need time to maybe do some follow-up research or process it instead of just making a decision that night. So I guess that always leaves it open for tabling, but.
I mean, that's,
yeah.
the notice ahead of time is fair. At the same time, there's probably a medium in which that has to go through, whether you go through someone on this list, and then everyone having the same access to the information, the answer should probably be BCC'd to everyone.
And then I would argue that if it's a process, or if we all have access to call Megan, or our clerk, we all have that access to do that. If you feel that you need that information or want to ask a question, you have that access to do so.
So why can't you just ask your questions through the designated people on this list? What's prohibiting that, I guess? Why do you, not to call you out, but you're the one that mentioned it.
no,
Why do
I
you specifically need to ask Mark a
Yeah.
question? Can you just contact Megan and say, hey, I have a valid question, legal to, relevant to trustee business? Is that not the process to have Megan pass that
What do you
question
think,
along?
You're free to call me anytime.
Yeah.
Mostly in business hours are preferred.
And then
Let's
would
let's
you,
put a little bit out
yeah,
there.
would you take that question forward to Mark then, and?
Yeah, and I have, we've had instances per se where the cemetery board has needed some legal questions answered, or currently the PILOP committee had legal questions, so they passed them on to me, I reviewed them, said, yeah, I am unsure, I would pass that on to Mark, and then I've taken it to Mark and asked him to review the ordinance issues that they've had. That's
That's what should be
generally
done.
the steps that I've taken.
So if I could follow up just slightly, I know before you took the office of president, you and had discussions about being able, this board to have access to Mark. Can you allude on, I'm assuming your position has changed, and why? Then, just for clarification,
Well, I
because
would-
there's stuff that you see that we don't, you know, you're in a different position now, and I know originally your thoughts were, yeah, that sounds like a good idea.
Right, I wouldn't allude, I would make a statement that, yes, sitting in this position now, just as the position has changed where you fought adamantly against having an appointed clerk or treasurer, your position has also changed. I would
didn't
say-
change. I said I had a discussion.
I would say that my position, I understand where it's at, that I at least offer access. I'm not sure that I was offered access to the president or the clerk to vet questions. I'm at least offering, I would absolutely, and I have been, but I could also see how it could potentially overwhelm and add confusion into the board.
Apparently it wasn't clear to me that access was offered, so I'm happy with that, if I can have access if I ever have a question. I mean, it's no secret, I ask a lot of questions and I do my homework. And so sometimes I might have a question, and if I've got access through you, then if the rest of the board's good with that, then I'd say we go with that.
Can always ask.
That would be the way I think it should be done.
Okay, all right.
Otherwise, Mark will get phone calls every day, 2, 3, 4 times a day.
You think so, from us?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Who would be drafting the language that you'd like to propose for the,
Changes?
you wanted to be able to lay out the steps?
You know what, Jamie, if you want, I can send you those highlights and you can word them however you feel comfortable. And then you want to bring a draft back to us?
Sure.
Okay, all right.
I don't, is that part of the burden? Or would it be on you guys to draft that and bring it back?
I think village records fall,
It is village records do fall to me. You guys.
In general, you're not their secretary. I said, in general, you're not the secretary to the board.
That's my only concern, is that as where I am the keeper of things, right? It's not my job to update the policies, it's to retain them. If you guys are going to update the policy, I don't have a problem with it. I guess, if I could ask, Mark, is that inside the purview of the clerk? Because if it is, I'll do it. I don't have a problem doing it. But if I'm asked to update policy based on how you guys want to see it, I think it'd be incumbent upon you to craft it and bring it back, and then I can post it, you know what I mean? Like, so we can ensure that the way you envision the policy is being corrected, rather than just say, hey, here are my notes, I'm gonna craft it.
I don't think we've ever asked the clerk to do that before either.
And I don't want to get too wonky about this, but you might want to consider or think about, this is a policy for the village council, Romeo Village Council Rules of Procedure. This is your policy. So you're asking, which I think it's not inappropriate, but I understand, I believe, Mr. Lucero's pushback, or at least standing up to the question, is you're asking somebody who doesn't vote on the council, who's not a council member, to craft your rules of procedure. Again, I think you can ask, and I think he can do it. There's nothing illegal or unethical about it. you just might want to ask yourselves, is that how you want it to go?
Well, who typed up the first list we have? Where did that come from?
I have no idea.
Somewhere back in,
Back in the day.
this is from 19, but I know we've had them way before that. When I suggested edits, I made the edits and I brought it here.
April of '23. Okay, so,
I guess it's,
Do you want me to send you the working document?
thank you, that's what I was just gonna
For
say.
sure, and then you
It's
don't have
always
to-
stayed with someone at the office because of that purpose, we've only just had, so to retype
Yeah, I
everything.
could-
My
No.
guess is that she probably typed this out herself on her computer.
Yeah, she has the workable document.
Yeah.
Right.
Within that, but if that's made available.
We've never asked the clerk to do this type of work before.
Yeah, I can send you the working document so that
Okay,
it's there and
okay.
you just make the
Huh?
edits.
Thought we have.
I
in
mean,
the
if we had
past. I thought
set changes, maybe.
Yeah,
but-
I thought that was part of recording and documenting and stuff, the clerk to the board, the clerk to the cemetery board. I thought that was part of the process. If I'm wrong,
No.
I stand.
Well, but it seemed like he was being asked to draft
no, I said I'll
changes.
send an email with the information to put in here, because I don't have this.
For-
I presumed it came from the village hall at some point.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean,
So
if-
as an agenda, to add it into the next meeting so that we can discuss it at that point?
Well, and specifically, I
vote
was
on that.
asking for the steps, it was mentioned about FOIA and information, and that we would want steps. It was that sort of language, where and who would be crafting it.
I can offer it, but again, if it has to go through Mark to make sure it's legit, and what I'm suggesting isn't violating anything, I don't know if he looks at this or he has to sign off on it, but anything that I've suggested, I'm happy to put in writing and send on, and that's what I said I would do, not knowing who holds this document.
Okay.
To me, it seemed like a village document, and that would be the clerk. So if we change ordinances, then would you be the person to type them up? Who types up the ordinance?
In general,
I do.
Mr. Clark does that.
Once approved.
Yeah, if you say you are going to adopt an ordinance on this subject, you give me the bones and I put the skin on it, and I prepare it and then submit it to you, and you either say, yes, this is it, or no, it's not, or it's close, but, the only ordinance I can think of in the last 4 or 5 years that I didn't physically prepare, and it became a little sticky, was the marijuana business license ordinance. That was a cut and paste out of my hands, so if you have an ordinance, I've been the one to prepare it, and I expect and I hope to keep doing that going forward. I treat that as part of my role and an important part of it.
Well, it keeps
Also, like
them,
Justin worked with him on the
Yep.
president's ordinance
Yes.
and the,
Treasurer.
so he's,
it keeps the layout continuous, and it also allows you to look at it legally as as you write it.
Okay.
After hearing what you've added, and the only other thing that, when going through this, that I thought about, some of what I thought was the same as yours, but additions to the agenda night of to be voted on, I'd like to see that written in as not acceptable. It's the same thing as, we have some information, we get some new information at the meeting, sometimes that's a lot to digest, but to add a new topic to the meeting, night of, have no information, period, ahead of time, and then ask to make a vote or decision, I would argue, with the exception of emergencies, but in most cases,
Right.
we have other policies in place that allows our elected officials to work on emergencies. If something needs to be done, or a tree's coming down, or something blows up at wastewater, there's the authority already given to work through that emergency stuff. But additions night of, I think, should not be accepted for more than discussion.
Okay.
Does that, to your knowledge, does that disagree with any village law? I mean, just because that's our rule of procedure, there, as a trustee, as a board, we'd still have the power to do so, right? Just because it's procedure doesn't mean it's illegal or against village
Yeah,
law.
procedures I would consider guidelines where ordinances are
Right.
law, right? So this is a procedure, it's a guideline. I think it's a best practice, and I don't see why, if you don't have the information ahead of time, you don't have anything prepared ahead of time, I mean, I don't.
Would you suggest like a time frame, or just by the Tuesday before the meeting is the only time you can submit something to be voted?
Yeah, I
What do you
think
suggest?
it's written in here Tuesday at
Noon.
4:30.
No,
No, it's in
noon.
here at 4:30.
No, noon.
4:30.
Not
No
anymore.
later than noon on Tuesday.
And then what's this then? District, you submitted to the group.
Documents at 4:30.
Oh,
So
so
your
addition,
agenda item is at
that's what
noon.
I'm saying, 4:30, so you gotta
Yeah.
have agenda item by
Cross it
noon
out.
and documentation by 4:30.
Yeah, I think what you say is fair.
I think in
I
general,
wouldn't,
and I agree, it would be great, but I think there's also emergencies that come up because
But is it any?
it's a
is
date
it-
that comes up, this has to be paid by this and this, and, you know, this, there's those kind of, but in general, I totally agree with you.
I would-
Because
That's why I alluded to,
Yeah.
in the case of an emergency that
Or it could
doesn't
just
cover.
be, anything added at the meeting is just purely discussion, such as this item. This item was added at the
Right.
meeting, we're discussing it, there's no final decision right now.
Good.
And I will point out, I know we had a brief discussion on this, there is a link on the presentations.
Yeah, I see that.
Already in there.
so back to the last topic.
Yes,
Do you-
council.
I guess I would just, in my opinion, I would still heed ruling out the possibility of doing that, because you don't know whatever might come up. I mean, yes, there's still emergencies, but we'd still want to have our empowerment to vote on something. I mean, you don't want to just rule it out because it's rude. We do want to know something ahead of time. We should have something to review in a packet.
Yeah.
We should have ample notice, but I don't necessarily think that you just want to, no ifs, ands, or buts. If anything's added, it has to be for discussion only. You still have to have that
If
that
there's
window
a
of
time
opportunity.
frame or emergency, that, again, procedure, guideline, that this council determines, okay, this is an emergency, we will make a decision on that, I can accept.
Yeah, maybe put a
But
clause in there.
We got, like you just said, we gotta pay this by the 12th, and
Well, or.
we're not gonna meet again
sometimes
before that,
I've
we
been
don't
in
wanna call
meetings
a
where the
special
president will come
meeting.
in, I got
Right.
this morning. Here it is.
Yeah,
Now you gotta make a decision on it like right now.
exactly, that to me is not acceptable.
And that's, well, sometimes it happens. It happens.
Again, if timing or it's emergency, that's one thing, but if it's not, and it can feasibly or practically hold off to the next month, 100%.
I agree.
I agree.
Yeah.
In general, it should be, because you don't wanna get surprised by something that's,
Yeah. And
Yes.
it's happened,
and you want to be able to think about things, you might change your mind between here and there, you know.
yeah, if you get some research, do some digging, you know,
Yep.
best wording
Mark,
for that.
is there any ruling, law, guideline that people can or can't add to the agenda and expect a vote? Like, did you have to have everyone present? You don't have to, you just have to have a quorum?
No, there's no specific rule in that regard, but there are quorum requirements, and some things require 2/3 vote, such as going into closed session for certain discussions. So there are rules that affect that. I think it's more in terms of what you're considering as a board, in terms of governing yourself. One, it says Romeo Village Council Rules of Procedure. So if you adopt them, you want to follow them. You don't want all of your treatment of the rules to be by exception. You want to follow the rules. They're your rules, how you conduct yourself. The public can come in and look at them and say, oh, okay, this is how they operate. I always think that more notice is always better. The more people know about what you're doing or what you're not doing or when you're meeting, that's why the statute requires 18-hour notice to call a special meeting. Why at the beginning of every year you have to post your meeting dates and times and location. More information is always better. So can you add things even in spite of your rules on an emergency basis? Sure, you can waive a particular rule that applies to you, but then how do you vote on that? Do you want a supermajority to waive a rule, or do you want a simple majority to waive a rule? Do you want to vote on it at all? You want to adopt rules that are workable and flexible enough to allow you to do your jobs, but you don't always want to be voting on accepting or making an exception to the rules.
It's kind of be like a reconsideration vote. You gotta get a vote on it, even voting again. So if we had a
The next
vote.
meeting, and it's got to be somebody who voted in favor of it.
Yeah, so it's similar to that. If there was a vote to add something for consideration or a vote, you'd have to vote on it as the board prior to determine if it is emergency.
You can bake all of that into your
Makes sense?
rules.
Or did I
Yeah.
just
Yeah,
spew a lot of words?
what you're saying is fine, I just think a safety clause in case is nice.
I agree.
Okay. All right.
Motion to adjourn if discussion is done.
I did have one other with that. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, you're
There's
fine.
been talk of adding or moving public comment. Adding an additional to the end of the meeting or
That's-
moving
That's not even on here.
in
You're doing this yourself right now.
No, it's rules of procedure. I think.
Rules of
Is that what you're
procedure.
getting at? Yeah.
yes, yeah,
It's in here somewhere.
yeah, where public
Okay.
comment falls into rules of procedure. If there'd be, keep it just at the beginning, add it a second to the end, or move it to the end. I was,
Miss Sandra
brought
said
up.
she's not gonna stay here that long.
Personally, I think it should be early, if not first thing, because their opinions matter, and if we're gonna be voting on something later that very same night, it's nice to know what people have to
I
say.
agree.
Yeah, it's a little
And,
late after the
and
fact.
it, logistically, pushing it to the end of a 3-hour meeting is cruel, in my opinion.
Yeah, it makes them sit through it
Yeah.
to say something.
Didn't it used to be beginning and end?
We switched it for a couple times, didn't we? Like a
We
couple
had it
months
at
ago,
the
we
end,
switched it
then we
once.
moved it to the beginning.
I don't remember it being at the end. But anyway,
I
I also
was asked
remember
to throw
people
that
being
one
able to
Yeah.
raise their hands. during
We
the
had council
discussion.
comments at the end. I
Still on
remember
the
that.
table, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I gave a second to the motion to adjourn.
No, wait, I have two quick questions. Two, real quick. Chief, a few months ago, we gave you a significant amount of money to upgrade and do things you needed to do. Is that going along well for you, and you're still having what you need?
Chief,
I was hoping for a yes or no.
she's talking to Chief.
Chief, I said, we gave you a significant amount of money to help get your department up to par, and I just want to check in to make sure that that's still working for you, and you still are moving along with what you need, and the funds are good.
Yeah, after month one of my assessment, I gave you a bunch of foundational things. Is this working?
Yeah.
Foundational things I needed to get in place. My vision was, when we get those things in place, I want to take us through the accreditation process. The answer is, I think I said it last meeting, I'm about 75% there. And the 25% is the big one that I will be presenting next month.
And you can see their nice new vests.
I know, it looks like,
Sorry?
Your nice new vest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The body armor came in prior to the Peach Fest, so
Yeah.
all the guys are very
Nice.
appreciative of that, so.
Yes, and we did get the camera into the Village Park before Peach Fest also, which, go figure, did come in handy at a few different times.
I'm sorry.
The camera at Village Park,
Yes, that's up and running, and there's a monitor and dispatch. We're
Yes,
currently
we-
trying to get the middle school's cameras integrated with that system, so.
yeah, so that we can start
Fabulous.
seeing, yeah.
So you really broke your
Fabulous.
own rules on here, because if I'd had time, I may have wanted to ask questions that I can't think of. So there you go.
all right, and then, wait,
It hasn't even been done for 60 seconds.
I know,
And
that-
you came in and broke it.
that's right. And then real quick, Jamie, have you been able to wrap your head around the BSNA software program? That was a big deal. Okay, thank you.
Ooh, and the roads will be paved, starting to get the final layer on what's left, no later than Friday.
Motion by Nolan, second by Mr. Fowler.
All in favor?
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?